Silent Hill: The Short Message is the first new playable entry in the franchise since 2012's Downpour, and it was announced and released on the same day exclusively to the PS5 for no charge. Now, for a lot of us who are deep into the Silent Hill fandom, we might have heard of this project a long time ago, codenamed simply Sakura. Little was known about the game, and some even questioned if it was cancelled before being shown off at Sony's most recent State of Play. Well, the game's been out for a few days, and now having personally played it, it's time to discuss. It's a short game that took me about 2.5 hours to complete. Now you may be thinking, Griff, that's kind of a long time compared to how quickly others have beaten it. Well, there's a reason for that. The Short Message is a first-person walking simulator with various chase sequences looping until the final chase, after which you can complete the game. The reason it took me 2.5 hours, well, I suck at those kinds of games. And I generally don't really like them. Not quite the first thing you think of when you hear Silent Hill, these walking sims were popularized, ironically enough, by PT, which at this point, I doubt needs any explanation, creating this strange meta situation in which the franchise is simultaneously calling back to itself, while also not. Confused? Me too, let's move on. The Short Message, unlike, I believe, any other entry in the franchise, takes place in the present day, and contains serious subjects like mental health, bullying, and suicide. And before we actually dive into reviewing this thing, going on about what I like and dislike, I would just like to say that I'm very pleased this game focuses on such difficult subjects. They aren't anything new or revolutionary, but they are current and prominent with young people today. Horror as a medium is uniquely suited to represent such topics which have the ability to destroy the lives of so many. I hope video games and all media alike never stop talking about mental health and hopefully inspire countless people to get the help they may need. With that, Silent Hill: The Short Message follows a teenager named Anita, who is searching an abandoned apartment complex after receiving texts from her friend Maya. Maya is a sort of street artist, making waves on social media for her graffiti inside the complex, the girl going by the pseudonym CB, which stands for Cherry Blossom. Maya's art intends to paint the beauty and recovery using young girls with cherry blossoms sprouting from their scars. Anita, through her own narration, communicates with the audience that she too has scars of her own, believing she'll never be as talented or popular as her friend. Later, Anita learns that Maya has passed away and is suddenly and intermittently transported to the other world, where she must escape a monster which has been dubbed by some fans as Sakura Head, another Masahiro Ito monster design to be added to his arsenal of classics. Now, like I said earlier, I deeply appreciate the sort of story which is being told here, but it wouldn't be fair if I only spoke about what the game is trying to do rather than what it's actually doing. So, my biggest gripe with this game is Anita herself. Nothing to do with her character, but rather with her constant narration. It's been talked about endlessly over the years, but Silent Hill's bread and butter lies in its subtlety and nuance. The narration by Anita in this game is practically the exact opposite of subtle and nuanced.
I'm trapped. I've always been trapped.
I understand what the game is going for, and I also understand that people like this do exist, but the constant on-the-nose comments do get tiresome and often enter the eye-roll zone. Aside from that, like I said earlier, at its core, the story being told is not only high quality, but relevant and important. Issues of identity, fitting in, bullying, not only for young people in general, but for young girls and women, are issues that can rule everyday life. However, in execution, I think The Short Message just misses the mark. Not for mishandling any of the aforementioned topics, I actually think they did quite well with them. Rather, the acting throughout the game is so jarringly mediocre, to say it nicely, that it can be immersion-breaking. And this is not the janky acting of, say, Silent Hill 2, for example, which has a charm and often enters a sort of fever dream-like quality. This is more so just entirely out-of-place, melodramatic line reading. Anita herself is often guilty until later stages of the game, but the worst offender is, by far, Anita's mother.
This is all your fault! Bad things happen because of you!
Really, it's almost a shame that so many of these moments just take the gravity away from what otherwise would be such impactful storytelling. I had similar feelings during the section which takes place in the school, with the floating, derogatory words suspended in midair. Though not as bad as much of the dialogue, moments like this just feel like way too much. Some subtlety could be managed here, it would be okay. Nevertheless, the story wraps up nicely with redemption and the strong human will to live. No matter how lonely you feel, there is always someone that cares about you. And the ending sequence, in my opinion, finally feels like the moment that isn't woefully overacted, creating what's probably the most moving scene in the entire game. So while I do genuinely like what the short message is going for narratively, it is ultimately guilty of getting in its own way far too often. Of course, a game cannot be Silent Hill without great creatures, atmosphere, and music, and I'm very happy to say that the short message delivers in all of these categories. When I first booted up the game, I wasn't aware that Akira Yamaoka or Masahiro Ito were involved, but the moment I heard the main menu music, I knew the former had to be behind it. Instantly, it felt like I was playing a Silent Hill game. Yamaoka, once again, as he always does, absolutely delivers on his work here. As mentioned previously, Masahiro Ito leaves his mark in a major way with his newest Sakura head, but his work with the Otherworld sections cannot be overstated. These chase sequences had my heart racing, and a lot of it had to do with the environment you're in. His work here actually reminded me a lot of 1999's Silent Hill's Otherworld. Very rusty, hot, and dark. Finally, we must talk about the gameplay, which is fine. The game works well enough and doesn't feel terrible to control, but as I said earlier, these kinds of games just aren't for me. I specifically am not a huge fan of chase sequences in which I have no idea where what I'm actually running from is roaming. Personal grievances aside, these sequences were not all that difficult until the final loop, where we must collect photos before entering the final door and moving towards the game's finale. This chase was ridiculously frustrating. In the moment I'm being chased, I have a very hard time taking in and remembering my surroundings, so I ended up just running in circles until mindlessly stumbling upon what it was I needed to find. For me personally, sequences like this just aren't very fun to play. I do understand that there are people who enjoy this style of gameplay, so objectively I find it hard to pass judgment on them. As I've learned since completing the short message, this game sort of acted as a springboard for Konami and the Silent Hill team. Internally, Konami hasn't made a proper horror game in 20 or so years. As it is, I don't think they've designed a game period since Hideo Kojima was employed by them. And in interviews with Konami's staff since this game's release, it has been communicated that this project was all about trying new things and getting some experience. And listen, we all, rightfully so, have reservations when it comes to Konami. We shouldn't trust them or look to them with any sort of goodwill. But it would be unfair not to mention that it does truly seem like they're trying here with this Silent Hill revival. This isn't like a decade ago with the release of Downpour, the second film in the HD collection. This isn't sloppily putting together a couple projects and looking to make a quick buck. Silent Hill now has its own separate internal team within Konami, which is being spearheaded by a guy with a ton of experience making high-quality games with Nintendo. The fact that this was even made in-house, yes, with the help of a third-party studio, is still a step in the right direction. Nothing will ever absolve Konami's sins. We shouldn't forgive them for their near 2 decades of incompetence with the franchise, but we should recognize that they're trying something here, and only future releases will tell us whether or not they succeed. At face value, what we have here is a short, free experience that touches on sensitive subjects with class and respect. As a sort of experiment internally from Konami, it works. Is the game a masterpiece? No, absolutely not, but for what it's trying to do, I would say it's effective and shows the strengths of a new team being guided by a couple veteran powerhouses of the franchise. While I hope this is the last first-person walking simulator we get from Silent Hill, I can respect the short message for what it is. Even with the problems I have with this game, I'm willing to give it around a 6 out of 10 and say that it's likely the best entry in the franchise since Shattered Memories. If you have the time, give it a try, and next, hopefully, we can finally see more from the remake. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe. It helps out a ton, and I'll see you next time. Bye.